Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 134. You're in for a treat today. Bob and I unpack his biggest regrets during his time, his 40 years of property developing. The reason we did this was because maybe you are having some of these issues and it's perhaps something you could look at and think, well, I don't want to regret it. Why not learn from someone who's already made that mistake? So we unpack education, consultants, investors, stock, and delegation in that order. So you will enjoy this episode where you learn about what Bob Blimmermill did wrong. It's a great one. Jump on in. Hello and welcome back to the Property Mastermind Podcast. We're on episode 134, as I said. And yes, talking Bob Andersen's biggest regrets in property development. Bob, might get a bit personal here. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I don't know. We'll see how we go.
Well, we'll see how we go.
Could be the other side of the tough developer.
Oh,
The soft underbelly.
Ah.
You know about that.
No.
I'm just a puppy.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. So
reminds me of that song, Regrets of, I'm not going to sing it, obviously. Regrets I've had a few. Remember that there's a song that's part of the lyrics. I think it's a Frank Sinatra song.
Oh,
I did
I've
it my
had
way.
a few.
I did it my way.
Yeah. Crikey, that took a while to go. People, there's a lot of younger people have no idea what we're talking about.
Who's Frank Sinatra?
Yeah. Yes, I think it was also sung by somebody else.
Yeah,
that's why I don't know the Frank Sinatra version, but I've got another version of it. So, Bob, I can push that forward. We're giving away the book this week to Sam. Is it Janet or Jeanette? Anyway, Sam, we've spoken a few times. You've joined the Property Accelerator. Woohoo, go you. I'm excited. I know you're going to go further in property development and I'm looking forward to September. I think we're having another chat. Anyway, this book is in the post to you. Should be just about on your doorstep. Well done, Sam. It's been great having a yak with you. All righty, Bob, before we get started on your biggest property development regrets, do you have any tips for the day for the podcast? Why is that so funny?
Always seem to fall back to fishing and boating, don't I?
Okay.
Tips. Don't cross the bar at low tide in a southeaster.
Oh yeah, we had a bit of a bad experience. I've got some massive bruising. We were extremely lucky. We
got thrown around a little bit, didn't we?
We did get thrown around. I suppose. How do you say it? We took a big one from behind, but luckily
and two from the side.
We had one of those pretty good boats, but we looked up afterward, and there had been that week two boats sunk,
2 sinkings,
and about 7 had been rescued. So I think we were quite lucky.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a bit crazy.
Oh,
so what was your tip then with that?
Don't cross the bar at low tide in a strong southeasterly.
Okay, all right. I'll remember that wind. Anyway, that's a whole story in itself.
I'll get a non-fishing, non-boating one next time. It's just that when you put me on the spot, my mind goes there straight away.
Yeah, for those that I get to meet this year, if you'd like to hear the full story, ask me because it's a little bit horrendous. And oh my goodness. And we will get to meet actually. We've got got a few events booked this year. They'll be going up on the website soon. But just pencil in, for those of you who are interested in learning about joint ventures, we are doing a full 2-day workshop, not just a networking event, a full 2-day workshop on joint ventures. So there will be investors and people looking for joint ventures partners there, and that's the 18th and 19th of May, and we're going to be doing that in Sydney. Yep. So if you are keen to register your interest for that, there will be a link below. We know it's going to be a very exciting and probably book out pretty sort of early type of event, so you won't want to miss out. So there is different pricing for that, and it will depend on where you are on your property development journey with us and what you've already attended or purchased. So there are different pricings depending on what you've purchased with us. But anyway, nonetheless, it's going to be a fab event.
Yeah, get in early.
Yes, learning. So it's actually a full joint venture workshop.
Yeah, by itself. We haven't done one before like that.
No, we did a meetup, which was very overview.
Yeah. For an hour, 3 hours potentially. But yeah, that's going to be great.
Yeah.
Because I've had a little bit of experience doing joint ventures and capital raising, so I'm going to open right up.
Yeah, cool. And the reason I said that was because if I get to see you at that event, you want to hear about the crossing the bar story, make sure you ask me. Okay, Bob. So you've obviously had a few years in the development space.
Yeah, you've noticed.
Yes, yes. And you must have a few regrets because I think we all, regret the odd thing in life.
Oh yeah, I mean we all well don't look too much in the rear vision mirror, but obviously, when you're starting out, particularly the way I did, you make mistakes, and then you probably end up with a few regrets. But I cast my mind back decades ago there when I got started, and remember there was no education around then.
No.
So not that I was actually looking for it too much. I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof at the time,
Mm.
like any young guy in his early 20s, going to tackle the world and take it on full on. But there really wasn't. I decided a little bit later to try and get some, but there were no university courses.
Mm.
Not that I recommend them anyway, but there's really nothing. I mean, you could study to be a valuer. It's probably as close as you could get, and that's a long way from being a
Mm.
developer.
Yeah.
And so it was learn by your bootstraps. Just give it a go. Try and see what other people were doing. Try and reverse engineer it.
So why was that a regret? And the reason we're asking these questions and Bob goes over this today is because you can learn from his mistakes, being someone who's been around for a while. So why was that a regret for you, Bob, not having the possibility of education or not getting educated if you couldn't?
Well, I was lucky,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it's fully a regret, but I probably should have asked more people, done a bit more due diligence on property development than I did. I was lucky because remember my first deal was presented by a fellow called Tony, who really helped me out. It was a vendor finance deal. I did it with no money, but I just rode on his back. Had I done one myself without Tony's help, it could have been a totally different story. So
Mm.
it's a tale of good luck, a good start, but you sort of make your own luck as well. But these days, of course, we still see people heading off into property development without any education, and it's there,
Mm.
and that is stupid. And we see the results of some of that, of course, from time to time.
And I think that happens, Bob, because um, you can understand some of the bigger moves. There's some big moves. You do that, you do that, you do that. But there are a lot of moves in between, and getting that timing wrong can be critical. It can cost you a fortune with finance. Just a lot of things that have to happen in a
Yeah.
particular order, and the details and the due diligence that you don't know about, and understanding really thoroughly the numbers.
Yeah, yeah. And what I didn't know, what I didn't realise when I'd started out,
Oh,
because I knew nothing. See, look, there's no education out there at all. Nothing about property development, virtually nothing about property investment.
And there was no internet. You couldn't
No
Google it. You
internet.
couldn't look anything up.
God, no, you couldn't look. If you wanted to look anything up, you went to a library. And there wasn't there wasn't anything there. There weren't any books or anything. So I did what I could do and did have a bit of good luck. But see, my dad was a spray painter, panel beater,
Mm.
and and they lived. My mum and dad lived in the same house from the time they got married to the time they died. So um, they didn't know anything about finance, didn't know anything really about property. So I didn't have anybody to teach me. So I was sort of out there on my own, which was okay. But you know, these days it's all laid out in front of us. As you say, no internet back there, very, very, very little to do.
Are you saying you can find out on the internet, Paul?
No, but you can generally educate yourself a fair bit.
Oh yeah,
What I
online
didn't,
education.
I didn't even understand about property cycles in the respect that I just thought the market was
The
always the
market.
same. Well, when I entered the market, I thought, oh, that's the property market.
Mm.
I didn't realise that it ebbs and flows.
Mm.
That property values go up, and they can also, like, the market can get overheated. You can have corrections. I didn't realise about all the fluctuations in interest rates. I mean, everything we know now.
And
I,
products and how they're
I didn't
affected.
know. Well,
Yeah.
my first projects I did for when I was starting out for a while were just land subbies. My first one was a 4-lot subdivision that I did, but it reached a point, a couple of projects on, where I just thought this is going to go on forever. In fact, the way I was going, I thought I'll be retired at 30. like, it must be pretty clever. How come everybody doesn't do this? That's what I'm thinking.
For
But
those listening and not watching, I'm watching his
uh,
face, and all I see is one of your grandson's faces when you do that. I must be pretty clever. You look like Billy.
but it all come home to roost because that was on the Gold Coast, and that's one of the most volatile markets in the universe, of course. And then I found out about how cycles can change, and spent 2 years fighting my way out of a project to get out of it, make a very meagre profit, and actually survive.
And
That
what
was
did that
a
surviving
few projects in, but that's how naive I was.
what did that surviving take, Bob? What did that mean for you? Were you married with children by then?
Yeah,
And so, what did that mean? Was that when you
yeah, I
had to go
was.
and take extra jobs on and
Huh.
stuff?
Well, I did because what I had to do, well, interest rates went up, sales disappeared. Very hard to sell vacant land at that point. It was hard enough to sell a house, and I realised that just to keep up with the interest rate, I needed a lot more money than what I had. And I actually went out and bought a business that had a lot of potential to build up fast than I did. It was a manufacturing business, totally outside of what I was doing. And I got that, and I went from 1 employee to 9 employees really quickly. And I went out there and just marketed my products hard, I kept going because it became very profitable. But the banks just sucked all the money out of me. But at least I survived, and I got to a point where I built on the blocks of land. It was a subdivision I was doing, not a big one, but I built on every block one at a time, out of my excess funds and a bit of borrowing I could squeeze, because I could sell houses on the land. I couldn't sell the vacant land. And that made me realise, if things get tough, you can't rent out a block of land,
Mm.
where you
So you
could
were basically running that business. You grew it to pay your interest payments and
stay
keep it.
alive,
Yeah, to stay alive.
put food on the table and,
Yeah.
well, pay the bank first and what was left by food. So that was a tough 2 years. But
You had to sell something you owned too. You told me at that point
I
that
sold.
you really would have liked to have kept.
I had a nice boat, a fancy car, a couple of fancy cars that I built up out of, because remember, as far as I was concerned, property market stays the same forever.
And you're
And
going to retire at 30.
I was going to retire at 30, so
Yeah.
let's have a bit of fun in the meantime. So yeah, it didn't really work out that way, but it was a good lesson. But
Cashed up.
being the ultimate survivor, I mean, I'll do whatever
Yeah.
I need to do to survive.
That's where you and I are the same. We'll just do what it
Yeah,
takes.
and a couple of times in my life that have been tough, and I've needed money. As you know, I've gone out and done night jobs. I jumped in a mate's taxi for 6 months. I drove his taxi every weekend for 6 months, and I'd do like double shifts to help him out because a mate that had a taxi got injured, and he couldn't keep his taxi going. So, and I needed money, so I said, mate, I'll just do all the weekends for you. And he had his brother help him out during the week. So that was interesting. 6 months driving taxis, but particularly at night.
And was that during that time that you needed the money for that development?
Not for that development. No, it was another time when the market really swung around, and I was exposed, but I was okay. But I just needed extra cash. I mean, I was safe from a development point of view,
Mm.
but I was waiting. It was delays, and I was waiting for money, and I probably could have scraped by, but it was a way of actually getting some extra cash and helping a mate out.
Mm.
So I've done some weird stuff in my time.
So there you go.
So back to regrets.
Yeah. So you were talking about not having the education, and it wasn't as easy as you thought. And so at the time, who did you ask apart from Tony, who you piggybacked off?
Mm.
Who are the other people that you did ask?
Well, I did ask. I knew from some of the land stuff. Remember, I was selling real estate
Right.
as well,
Yeah.
and so I I spoke to a few developers that I knew who were doing land subdivisions because I was selling them as out of the real estate office I worked for. They weren't all that helpful. They played it pretty close to their chest. But I did get to talk to the civil engineer and the town planner on a few different projects, and they were helpful, but they're only giving me a piece.
What was
It
the
wasn't
reason?
everything.
And was that because they were holding their cards close to their chest, or
But
they only knew those
no, they were
pieces?
pretty good. But like a surveyor, town planner, they can tell you only about what they do. Civil engineer, yeah, I was putting the pieces together. I was pretty numerical, so I was sort of starting to work out how to get the numbers together properly, which is really a feasibility. I mean, this is really early days. Like I said, you can, it's all, I asked a couple of developers, they weren't all that helpful. I mean, they would have been able to give me the real picture, the full picture.
Mm.
but they weren't all that forthcoming. They might have seen me as one-day competition. I don't know why. It's a complete different attitude to what we have. I mean, we've created ourselves, haven't we? So many developers and sharing what we've learned, but it wasn't always that way. Some people just don't want to share what they know. That's okay. But
But
yeah,
also, but also, somebody who's sharing what they know doesn't know what you don't know, and then that's a lot of time to sit down and go over absolutely everything unless you missed out something. So a developer could have said
yeah.
something that misses out a critical step, thinking, well,
Oh,
it's,
exactly.
when you and I maybe have to look up something on YouTube to find out how to do something on the laptop or something, and it's like they've missed a step, and then you spend an
Oh,
extra hour doing something. That sort of scenario on the property development scheme.
I know the scenario.
Yeah, yeah.
Putting something together, the Chinese instructions,
Yes,
where
yes.
they leave vital pieces out.
Yes.
So yeah,
So
but
that's education. The next one you said, when we sort of broke this down prior to doing the podcast, you said was choosing consultants. One of the regrets you have was about consultants. Talk to me about those.
yeah,
What are your regrets there?
I probably went too much on price.
Right.
I was focusing way too much on money and not enough on the quality of work.
Yeah.
Um, the old saying, our friend, you know,
That's
prices
what you pay, and quality is what you get.
are
Oh, value
value.
is what you get. Yeah.
Value is
So
what you get.
sometimes you just chose the cheapest
Yeah, not
consultant, and
always,
that didn't pay
not
off.
always the good ones. No,
Right.
and probably another mistake I made is that I became friendly with a few, and automatically I'd give them the next job
Yeah.
instead of keeping friendship separate from the professional thing. I mean, you can. I mean, I got a lawyer's a good mate of mine and has been for like 40 years. He was my first lawyer, but uh, yeah, I think consultants, get the best consultant you can get, and we're doing that at the moment with architects on a particular project. Certainly not the cheapest architect, but we've seen their work and the quality of their work, and we need it. We need that on this particular project, and to pay for it. Not, I often say, let's say you got, if you terrible thing, if you had a brain tumor, what do? Well, you don't go out and seek fee proposals from brain surgeons and then try and force their price down and get the cheapest one you can get. When it's really important in property development, it doesn't mean you go to the overpriced ones because there are always overpriced ones. But yeah, I was just driven by the dollar, and
And that's a regret now.
well, yeah, I got bad service on some things that could have been done a lot better as well. But that happens to everybody. We all make mistakes like that.
And
But
the other one,
you
just
learn from them.
don't necessarily choose your mates. Then
No.
Bob, another. So you covered consultants, you covered education. There were two other topics that came up. One was investors. So tell me about your investor regrets.
Well, same thing. Uh, for a while, and you do it because you're sort of, I wouldn't say you're desperate, but like you need funds, you need investor funds, and I was just looking for someone with money. Like, I didn't really care about the person too much or what they were like or whether they were compatible, whether we could get on. And I should have spent a bit more time because I had a couple of investors on a few deals that were just so painful on the way through. And that was more likely their personality type or just the type of person they were. Whereas I didn't look too deeply on that. I just wanted to see if they had enough money and
You'd be like, yeah, you'll do.
if I could use the expression, stitch them into a deal, whereby they put the funds in. But a couple of times, like you're stuck with someone for 2 years,
Yeah.
and just became an ordeal all the time because of this, a couple of people.
So what would you have
And
done differently, Bob?
well, two things,
Yeah.
and another problem I had that's related to that is probably not getting really good documentation on a few projects in the early days, whereby I gave too much power, not power, I don't know if that's the word, to
Sharing
the investor.
control or something?
Yeah, to the investor, and I learnt from that as well. So the way around that is simply, and not we teach it this way. If you've got a developer and you've got an investor, the developer is the developer, the investor is not the developer, and
They are the investor.
you report to the investor, you update them, you give them monthly reports, send them photos, do whatever you like, but you can't have them in a decision-making situation. Somebody has to make the final decision. You can have their opinion on something. I got stuck on a project where I gave too much control to a few people. It was a bit of a syndicate. They wasted 6 weeks choosing tiles. It was a syndicate with a few people in it, and they couldn't make their mind up about what tile to use. And 6 weeks of interest while they're choosing tiles. Well, I'd never do that. It was a mistake. I'll never do it again. I mean, you might say, look, here's 2 tiles. Which one do you like? But someone has to choose the tile, and that's the developer, the project manager. So, is to really have good documentation, but never give an investor control. Like, you can't give them equal control.
No.
You cannot. It won't work. I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're your sister and your brother or your mother or your father. Someone has to be the project manager, the developer, and they make the final decisions. And so documentation is important. I learned that.
Documentation and just choosing
and
the right people.
The right people. It's not just about choosing people with money if you're going to get involved in it. I mean, you can separate that a bit with the right documentation.
Yeah.
When you've got a combination of the two, when you're giving too much power to an investor and you find out they're not as nice and friendly as you thought they might be, or they've got some quirks, and so they can have pressure in their lives from other sources that happen too, that put them on edge, And then if you're a bit late with your project, next thing there's you got something to deal with. So yeah, that's but I sorted that out, and particularly on the documentation side.
And that's just an opportunity for me to say, if you have money you'd like to invest, either come along to our joint venture seminar or give me a call anyway. We can have a chat about it. We often have investments going or have mentoring students looking for a bit of cash, so you know that Bob's all over the deal. So
yep,
good chance to have a chat anyway. And then it's all about exactly matching people up with the right people, and it's got to be the right timing, and there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, there is.
There is. And then the last one, Bob, you had no education, consultants, investors. The last one you said was stock, and we knew this was coming. When to keep the stock? You regret not keeping which ones?
Yeah, so when we talk about stock, in case some of our listening viewers aren't familiar, developers, our stock is what we create. If we do a 3 townhouse project, the 3 townhouses are our stock, and you can sell it or you can keep it or do a combo, of course. But what I did, I didn't even think about holding stock at the end of a project, because I didn't really understand investment. Remember, I had no education, either from my dad or mum or
you didn't grow up with
from
that
education.
As a thing. Yeah.
No, and no books, nothing. So I didn't understand investments. I didn't understand growth. So you've got to remember, the average person these days, what they know about property, I would have considered them to be an absolutely
genius
guru or a genius back in my day. Because, these days there's so much information out there. There's so many seminars, and people have a reasonable understanding about finance, a reasonable understanding about investment, how it works, taxation, because there's just so much knowledge being slushed around out there. And that's good. That's a good thing. But back then, no. And this is before any seminars. I remember one of the first seminars that I ever saw, and one of the first books on property investment was Jan Summers. So there's a name for some of you that are listening and watching. That would have been back in the late 80s, I reckon, that Jan was out there. But until then, nobody even talked about it. Nobody, negative gearing. This is way before all the negative gearing seminars, And so that's that's the way it was. And so I didn't understand the importance of holding property long term for capital growth, and the fact that you don't pay tax on your stock unless you sell it. So what you keep, you don't pay tax because you haven't sold it. It's potential capital gains tax down the line, but only if you sell it.
When you say that now, I spoke to somebody this week and they said, "Oh, just loving the podcast. I've learned so much." And so anyone who's talked to me in the last week, I'm talking about you. And he said to me, "I learned that you don't buy stuff in your own name." I didn't even know that, because it's just so useful. I bet you that there, Bob, was a bit of a nugget for some people thinking, "Oh." So yeah, you wished you'd.
I wish I kept more. Early. I mean, I had a pretty good lifestyle.
Yeah. Oh, you said you had to sell 2 cars and a boat when you got in trouble.
Oh yeah, but even so, yeah. I mean, got a holiday, had a massive house and cars and that, which is fine. But I should have kept some more property and had, maybe, because you think of what it was worth back then. I mean, it's crazy to think about it. But when I started off in property development, your average house was probably worth, in say Brisbane where I lived, Probably $55,000, $60,000.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I can remember doing house and land packages in 1985 where we did subdivisions, cut up blocks of land, built three bedroom low set houses on them. We were selling them for 57 grand.
There you go.
So you can, so you can imagine what they would be worth now. Like if I was probably punching out blocks of land with houses on it for 50,000, and what would they'd be worth? I don't know, just sort of guessing 650 now, probably those properties.
Mm.
I mean, yeah, like
Yeah.
it's funny when you think about it. Could have kept them for 50 grand,
So that is one of your regrets, and
and
it's
they
just
would have,
not keeping earlier.
even if you had a long loan on them, they'd all been paid off, years ago.
Yeah.
So, but I sort of made up for it later. But that could have been a good head start.
Yeah. Something that we often see is when we talk to, well, people that come through our education program, especially with the mentoring students, because we work so close with them, but they've got that plan, and we create that plan of, they know that after they've done X, then they'll start keeping. And that's probably what most people tend to do. You have to get a bit of a war chest up.
Yeah.
So they've got, before they can start keeping product. But while we're on that one, and we did discuss it before coming on, Bob, we talked about sometimes people hamstring themselves because they buy a property, their PPR generally, or investments,
Yeah.
and we've had that on another podcast, and it stops them doing property development. So that can go both ways, can't it? You could have gone the other way, not so much for you because you were already developing, but you could have people that buy, then they can't develop because they've got no war chest, they've got nothing to get started, unless they've
And they're
got
paying
joint venture
they're
partners.
paying retail price.
Yeah, exactly, and they're paying retail price for their stock.
Yeah, at least as a developer, we pay cost price.
Yes,
Which is why it's easier for us to keep properties as a developer than a retail investor. There's a big difference, when you go through the numbers.
Yeah.
But I didn't really understand that. I didn't understand the importance of holding property, long term and all the. Well, there were, that was before 1985. Before negative gearing, capital gains tax, everything sort of changed. Depreciation, it all changed around then. But it would have been a great time to hold more property. But anyway, look, you can't look in the rear vision too much. I mean, I did build up my knowledge eventually and realised that, and that's what we teach a lot these days when we're teaching property developers. We in our mentoring program, as you know, everybody's treated individually. We have a look at their situation, their financial situation, where they want to be in 1, 3, 5 years, and and look at building a portfolio. Maybe not immediately. Maybe the first few projects, typically where you cash out, build your war chest up, but then start to hold property at cost price.
Yeah.
And build it there. But I wish I had a time machine. I could have gone back, tapped myself on the shoulder.
Hey, Bob, keep a couple.
In the early 80s. Hey, mate, this is how it works,
How good would that time machine be? Oh my gosh, I'll go back a few times.
But then if I had the time machine, I might have just gone to the winner of the Melbourne Cup that year, just put everything on it. So.
Really? Oh, there you go. Mr. I don't gamble does a bit of gambling.
It sounds like Back to the Future.
It does a bit. Bob, the last one we talked about was, you said about delegation.
Oh, yeah. Gee, it took me a while to learn that. I was one of those micromanagers. Had to do it myself. Nobody can do this as good as I can. I'll do it myself. And also, probably right in the early days, trying to save a dollar. So I didn't understand the value of my own time. I'd do stuff just to save money, where I would have been better delegating or better putting my time into more productive. So I've probably gone the other way these days, but and delegation. And we've worked out, as you know, over the years, we're good at certain things, but we're not good at everything. And we're better off paying somebody to do the things we're not good at or don't like doing, and concentrating on the things that we do like and we are good at. But I took a long time to learn that, and wish I'd learned that. I wish I'd learned that earlier.
That sounds like the biggest one for you, is it?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's in my upbringing as well. My dad was a hard worker. He was a spray painter, panel beater. He'd work on weekends to make extra money and do all that sort of things. I just, in my early years before I really understood property development, it was all about exchanging time for money.
Yeah.
If you want to make more money, work harder, work longer, like my dad did. Took me a while to work out that the good money is made with your brain, but then I didn't fully understand I could have done better had I been able to delegate.
You told me about some holes that you dug.
Oh, that was an example I mentioned. So I bought a property. It was a few acres and had a big fence right across the front I wanted to build. And it required about 20 posts, had to go down about 600 mil while the ground was hard. But I was determined to do it. And so I spent 3 weekends digging holes to put the posts in. And, blisters on the hands from crowbars and everything. I felt pretty satisfied at the end, but pretty sore. 3 weekends gone. I should have just hired somebody with a tractor with an auger on the back. Spent the whatever it was. These days it might cost you $400, but straight $400 for 3 weekends work. Hourly rate's like nothing. But I suppose I did have time on my side as well. It's what wasn't that like, but that was, that's a silly example. I mean, I'd never think of doing that now. I used to do all my own car repairs because I could, because I learnt, panel beating, spray painting, mechanic like my dad. I could fix anything, paint anything, so that was my nature. It took me a while to change, and to release and realise, look, there are other people that can do some things better than me, and like, let's get them there. And you're paying somebody, $40 an hour to do something. Well, if you're doing that, you're only paying yourself $40 an hour. But you can make $100 or $200 or $500 or $1,000 an hour doing something a lot better that you're good at.
So let's summarise, Bob. You've come up with 5 things that we talked about today that were your biggest regrets. The first one, you've said not being educated or even
just
finding a way to learn.
Yeah.
And just having a go.
Yeah.
You don't have a go with property development.
Not understanding what I didn't know, not doing anything about it.
And the next one was consultants. So it was choosing people because they were your friends.
Just looking at the dollar.
Or looking at the dollar.
Get the cheapest of everything I could.
Yeah.
Not looking at quality, not looking at value like I do. I look at value, as you know.
Yeah.
Value is everything to me.
And then investors.
Oh, yeah. Those mistakes. Bad documentation.
Wrong people.
Wrong people, but a combination of the two just makes a project hell. Yeah.
And then stock.
Not keeping it.
Yeah, not keeping it earlier.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, not keeping it earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one, delegation.
Yeah, that was a big one. Understand your value, what you're good at, and just give it to the others. The stuff you don't like or you're not really proficient at. You've got to value your own time. I never did. I put a low value on my time.
So there we go, folks. Those of you getting started in property development, or those of you already in property development, maybe if you're falling down any of those holes, let's not wait a long time before you could possibly rectify them, and maybe check out if there's something you could be doing.
We'll get you on the right path.
Yeah, we'll get you there. I asked Bob before the podcast, what's something non-property development that you have a regret about and, not doing? And he said, what did you say?
Not having bet you earlier.
No, you didn't. You didn't say that. Oh, but that's a nice thing to say. No, you didn't say that. You said you regret not learning the guitar.
Yeah, I know. But that's my fault.
Yeah.
But I just never did it. When I was young, I actually, in my teens, I played drums, but the guitars, the guitar was one thing I really always wanted to play and never did. But that's my fault. It's not that I couldn't have. I could have. And I don't know if it's a regret because I don't like to regret stuff.
You said it was a regret.
Okay. Wish I'd learned the guitar.
Yeah, it's okay to have regrets. All right. Well, we hope that was useful for you, and we'll look forward to catch you. Or some of you we would have seen on the goal setting tomorrow night. This comes out after that.
Yeah.
For those who came on, we know it'll be amazing. And this year we're doing a mid-year check-in. So if you missed that, we'll be doing it all over again in July. It is free. We don't sell anything to you. It's just my way of supporting the rest of the world. So we'll catch you again this time next week. Oh, great episode next week. We've got an interview with a past mentoring student who's done amazing things. So be sure to tune into that one. Bye.
Bye now.